pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silent reflection for our servicemen and women throughout the world, and also for those who have passed away in our community. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Perry, Mr. Rogan, Mr. Evans,
Here.
Mr. Gahn,
Here.
Mr. Wexler.
Here. Mr. Perry was delayed returning home, and Mr. Rogan has an illness. That's the reason for their absences this evening.
I make a motion to appoint Councilman Gahn as temporary chairperson for the Committee on Community Development.
Second.
On the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, so moved.
I'd like to make a motion to table item 7E.
Second.
On the question,
Yes, on the question, I'm making this motion tonight. We have several questions that we would like answered about this legislation, so we intend on inviting Mr. Moran, the owner of the company, to a caucus next week to answer our questions.
On the question, as many people know, I've been a proponent of this legislation and getting a third party to get involved with the rental registration since I've been on City Council and probably before that. So I think we just had some questions on, conceptual questions more than anything else, and how the program will run with Mr. Moran involved with it, and hopefully we'll get that taken care of next week and get it back on track.
yeah, it's really just a matter of fine-tuning some of the information that we would like, and like I said, next week we can have Mr. Moran in, answer our questions, and move on from there. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, so moved. Dispense with reading of the minutes.
Third order, 3A agenda for the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting to be held July 12, 2017.
Are there any comments? If not, received and filed.
3B, Single Tax Office City Funds Distributed Comparison Report 2016-2017, year-to-date June 30, 2017.
Are there any comments? If not, received and filed.
3C, Tax Assessor's Report for hearing date to be held July 19, 2017.
Are there any comments? If not, received and filed. Do any council members have announcements at this time? A public hearing will be scheduled for the next Thursday, July 13th, to hear testimony regarding the closing and vacating of a portion of Wright Court. The hearing will be held at 5:45 prior to council's meeting.
Citizens' participation.
Faye Franis?
Faye Ferranis, Scranton. First, I'd like to thank the Scranton Times, Jim Lockwood and Chris Kelly for their excellent reporting on the sewer deal with the Pennsylvania American Water. I have a couple questions since last week that I've been thinking about. One of them was like this contract that Ned Abrahamson got. He basically, what Jason Shrive said today was that there is no contract. So how is this possible? There was no contract for Nate Abrahamson, who got $200,000 in 10 months. It didn't come in front of council for approval, because there was no contract. It never went out for bid, which it was supposed to do. And Mayor Courtwright and Jason Shrive said the money he got paid was reasonable because of all the work he did. Well, how would they know that? Because there's nothing in writing anywhere of what Nate Abrahamson did for the $200,000. Are you aware of any money, or of any letter, or of anything in writing saying what he was to do or what he got paid for?
No.
None of you are? Another thing, they also said that Jason Shrive said the sewer authority paid him. Well, I believe they had $38 million maybe put aside to sewer authority. But the city hired Ned Abrahamson, special counsel to the city. That would be like me having a contractor come to my house and doing all this work. And I tell my neighbor to pay for it, or somebody else. Come on. The person that hires the person pays for the work.
Faye, my concern is that you're right about that, that Sewer Authority paid him. However, he was paid out of the proceeds of the Sewer Authority transaction, which is the city's money.
Oh, but see, I didn't know that. I was told that it was $38 million that they had put aside, not the sewer. So it was from the sale.
Well, I'm assuming it was done at closing. That was, he was paid at closing. If that was the case, then he was paid from the sewer proceeds. So that's something we'll have to look into now.
See, I didn't know that. See,
Well, I'm not 100% sure. I'm making that
But that-
assumption, but that's something we'll have to look into.
Well, that's good to know, because that's
Yeah.
even more interesting, because if that's the case, that's the city's money, and the sewer authority...
That's my point.
Pardon me?
That's my point, exactly.
Yeah, mine too
Yeah.
now, so that's even makes it worse. So my point is, say Billy Courtwright had something done at his house. You think he would hire someone for $200,000 and not have a contract and just say, oh, you do a great work? Boy, that's a lot of good work. How much do you think it cost? $200,000? No problem. You did a lot of work, and that's good. But see this piece of paper? Say it's a contract. Without a contract, anything a person does, if they go to court to get their money reimbursed or anything, without this piece of paper, go home. You have no legal right. So all of this work that was done, in my estimation, was illegal. So where do you guys go from here? I challenge Mayor Courtwright and the Sewer Authority, the Auditor General, to come in. Now, Mayor Courtwright says they have nothing to hide and that they already have an auditor. They're doing their books. That's not the same. The Auditor General said he would work backwards and start from the beginning and find out all these finances. If they don't hide something, what are they afraid of? They just need to come forward and have the Auditor General to satisfy all the people in the city of Scranton. Because people in the city aren't stupid. They're not dumb. So election day is coming, and I think Mr. Courtwright's going to pay for it dearly. I mean, if he wants to save himself, get the Auditor General in here. I would be the first to apologize to him if they proved there was nothing wrong with this sale. I'd be the first to apologize. I'd gladly apologize, but I don't think that's the case. And how about the mayor paying off debts from the sewer sale without the sewer authority being dissolved? Isn't that completely illegal?
We asked Attorney Menor that question as well, and you want to, Attorney Menor, you want to answer that now? Well, no, we'll do it in motions. I don't want to take her time. Go ahead.
Okay, but
Yeah.
would you ask the Auditor General? I don't think the sewer authority or the city of Scranton mayor has to ask the Auditor General to come in to investigate that.
Well, we have. Oh, that part of it?
No,
Yeah,
that part of it. I don't
okay.
think he needs the sewer authority's permission. I was told that a statute 5612 in the state law, and he does not have to have approval. So that would be very important to get him in here to check the fact that the mayor paid some of these debts with that sewer money before the sewer authority is dissolved. And as far as what Jason Shrive says, just because he's a lawyer and he says it doesn't mean it's true. There's no contract. Everything they did was illegal. And I hope you gentlemen do something about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before the next speaker, Solicitor Menora, would you actually touch on the information that you gave us about spending of the sewer proceeds? The sewer proceeds? That using the money of the sewer.
You answered the question today in an email to Bill, so the answer you gave to Bill.
Oh, okay, regarding the
Councilman
Abrahamson.
Vaughn.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm sorry. I did look into it, and there was apparently no written contract, nor was there a letter of engagement. First thing I looked at was to determine whether or not one was required under our rules of professional conduct, and written contracts for legal services are only required in contingent fee cases. That being said, it somewhat goes without saying that a written contract or a letter of engagement is a much better practice, and clearly would have answered many of the legitimate questions that are being raised here. All that being said, oral contracts for legal services are enforceable and occur all the time. That doesn't mean that that was the best practice in this situation, and clearly it was not. Again, as it was explained to me by Attorney Shrive, the Abrahamson firm was hired for a flat fee of $200,000 that was to be paid by the Scranton Sewer Authority. There is no legal prohibition from one party paying for the attorney of another party. And I use the example of your auto insurance company, if you're in an accident, will hire a lawyer to defend you. And that's a similar situation, although there's obviously some differences. But the point being that there's no legal prohibition from one party paying for the attorney of another. As to the administrative code, clearly it requires a bidding if legal fees are going to exceed $19,400 in a year. The administration's position and opinion is that so long as the professional fee is not being paid by the city, the administration code was not applicable. That's their argument, and obviously there's a counter argument to that. And it could be argued that because the net payment by the sewer authority to the city was reduced by $200,000, the city did in fact pay that amount, and they wouldn't have not complied with the administrative code. So those are the two counterbalancing arguments on either side of that. I looked for case law that would clear this up, and there is none that I could find. It was even close, or from a legal, theory standpoint, something we could use as applicable. There were situations in the past where attorneys did work where counsel refused to pass on a contract that was sent down by the administration. That lawyer was paid on the theory of quantum merit. So the question of whether or not that $200,000 is recoverable is highly questionable from a legal standpoint, or in the sense that whether or not it would be successful. So I'm not sure that would be there would be anything fruitful to come of that in and of itself. So I think that's as clear an analysis as I could make of all of the different problems with this, and the conclusions, as I know, are somewhat unsatisfactory, but it's because of the nature of the whole thing that there are just no real clear answers.
Thank you. Also, did you send us an email regarding the Municipalities Act and spending of the
yeah.
authority was closed?
Right. That was another issue that was raised last week, and Councilman Gahn asked me to address it. Let's see if I can. I might be able to remember the code section off the top of my head, but the issue that was raised was the sewer authority had no authority to, the sewer authority, I'm sorry, had no authority to transfer over the money to the city because the sewer authority had not, thank you, terminated its existence. And that's patently wrong. The sewer authority has the ability under the Municipal Authorities Act to acquire property, sell property, lease property to or from themselves, for themselves or to someone else. And all of that's covered in 56 PA CSA 5607 sub D sub 4, and it allows them to do all of those things. As I understood the agreement with the sewer authority, the sewer authority sold their assets to Pennsylvania American Water and agreed to transfer the money to the city for the city's agreement to accept responsibility for the follow-on things that the sewer authority might have to do in the future. So that's clearly an enforceable contract, and they had a right to do it without termination ever being an issue.
Thank you. Lee Morgan?
Good evening, Council. You know, I've respectfully have listened to Attorney Menor's opinions today, and I haven't had a chance to go to the law library and read those laws myself. But I think in the end he said something that I think every Scrantonian should listen to, because the city's responsible for everything the Scranton Sewer Authority does in the end. So if it cost $200 million to get all these easements, the city's going to pay for it. Okay? And like the Scranton Times says, we don't know what kind of deal this was, but it's my opinion it's the worst possible deal that ever could have been made in this city. And you know, Mr. Evans, you talked about how the sewer authority was the city's asset. No, the city belongs to the residents. And as the residents spoke to council, and as residents spoke to the Scranton Sewer Authority about not selling this asset off, they did it anyway. And if you'd spend a little time, you'd find out, not just yourself, but the whole council and the whole city government, that the city's in worse financial shape right now than it ever was before. Okay, and we can put new curtains on the windows and pretend that everything's good, but it's not good. And when council tries to get the county commissioners to do a reassessment, well, it's pretty simple what's going on here. The city's desperate for money. The residents have no more to give. There's just nothing there. And when the Scranton School District, if it so happens, goes into receivership, the city's not going to be far behind it. You know, and the remarkable thing is, the University of Scranton took over the Southside Sports Complex. Okay, and I won't hash out that it was illegal to sell it under Section 70, but, you know, they're bragging about how they're sending the lights somewhere else to be used by different communities. Everything that this city government has done over a long period of time has been a waste of taxpayers' money, whether it's the parking garages and a host of other things. Because what has the benefit been to the residents of the city? And we continually have grant money going to the wrong people. We're going to keep putting grant money into the downtown. We're going to keep giving nonprofits grant money, but the neighborhoods are falling apart. It's come to such a pathetic way in the city that I'm not even sure the city's repaired potholes this year. And if they have, there's an awful lot of them around that really need to be looked at. You know, and I don't know if you can get blood out of a stone, but you're doing a pretty remarkable job of doing that. And it's just amazing that the people in this city that live here don't have enough common sense to realize that the people they've elected over a very long period of time have done a terrible job. Well, it's beyond terrible. And I think the greatest gift Scrantonians could give themselves is finding a third candidate and run them out and see if we can turn the city around. You know, Mr. Mulligan wants to be mayor of Scranton. I don't have any animosity against the man, but he's a trained attorney. He couldn't have moved to block the sale of the Scranton Sewer Authority. I mean, just see it for what it really is. Everybody wants to come save us, but really, citizens concerned about taxes blocked the sale initially when Mr. Connors was in office. And when you read that deal with Pennsylvania American Anglian, it was a joke. All this stuff that the city's done over a course of 20 years has been a joke, because the city's not in better shape. It's in worse shape. And the residents are poorer. I mean, you know, government should lift people up and empower them, but not in our city and not in a lot of cities across this country. Because the political parties keep their finger on you and keep pushing you down and keep stealing your wages, keep jacking your property tax up to the point where you can't pay it, and cause extreme despair, and don't have a solution for one problem that we face. And, you know, when council asked the solicitor a question, you know what I'd like to see? I'd like to see the council bring something into a court of law and listen to a judge tell them the way it is. Because, look, lawyers practice law. Judges interpret it. And you know something? There is case law. I didn't get a chance to read it all, but I'll tell you this. There was nothing right about any of the deals that have been done here. And I see this city rolling over sideways in a couple of years, because all the money will be gone, and there's still the pension debt, the stormwater collection system, and all the other host of problems this city has, and none of them have been solved.
Thank you. Doug Miller?
Good evening, Council. Doug Miller, Scranton. Obviously been quite a while since I've been here, and obviously not much has changed. I do want to just begin by congratulating Councilman Gahan on his incredible turnout in the primary. Should be very proud of that, and you know, considering the fact that you had a better turnout than the mayor, I think that speaks volumes. So you should be very proud of that, and I commend you moving forward. You know, Mr. Wexler, I think the residents of this city determine your fate, and your track record speaks volumes. I mean, your actions on this council over a short period of time have been quite disturbing and put the city in the position it's in today. And you weren't alone in the game. A lot of people were a part of the process, and you know, we obviously talk about this sewer deal, and you know, it's my opinion that this is basically the final nail in the coffin for this city. A lot of smoke and mirrors, no transparency, no answers to questions. But what really disturbs me is that we had a council that sat here the entire time and never asked any real questions. And you know, it all comes back to the council president, and that falls on Mr. Wexler's shoulders, hence another reason why he won't be returning in 6 months. But you never asked questions. You just sat there with your rubber stamps. Yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Courtwright, whatever you say. And yet the residents of this city continue to get screwed over time and time again. Just one beating after another. A lot of questions tonight have been brought up. Now we're discussing whether or not we might have had a crime take place. Was money spent illegally? That's the real serious question we have now, gentlemen. And is it going to take somebody to come forward and petition the residents of this city to come forward together as a community and take this and put it in front of a judge? You know, the question I have to the residents of this city tonight is, are they ever going to stand up and get a backbone and hold you people accountable? I mean, it's ridiculous. You know, and that's why we look to see the people we elect. I mean, it's beyond comical. I mean, truthfully, anybody that voted to have this gentleman, Mr. Rogan, return, quite frankly, should go check into Scranton Counseling tomorrow morning, because they're out of their mind. And anybody that supported any of these candidates, whether past, present, or whenever, I mean, it's absolute ludicrous, because we've elected one clown after another with empty suits. And maybe the best suit that some of you people could wear is the one with stripes going across. And call it what you will. I mean, we've had just one corrupt politician after another in this community. And you know, Washington got a real wake-up call in the last election by electing Donald Trump. And now you have Washington and most of the country scattering around trying to figure out how they're going to outdo him, because he's not a politician. And he doesn't play games. He's not part of this little good old boy club. Donald Trump, that mentality that he has, that's something that actually Scranton needs a little dosage of. It needed it about 30 years ago. to send a little message to the good old boy club here, that the Democrats and all the elite that have run this city for a long time, they need to get the hell out of here. But based off of our election process and the little amount of people that come out to vote, I don't know if that's ever going to happen because people don't participate. They've given up. I could understand why, but at the same time, you know, we have a lot of people out there that want to try to save this city. But sitting back isn't going to solve it. We need people to get involved and question you and hold you accountable. And that's why you get away with a lot of the things you do, because the smoke and mirrors, you play your little game. We have a news media that unfortunately doesn't always report the truth. And people just sit back like the sheep that they are, and they don't ask questions. They believe what they see on TV, the 30-second sound bites on the news. They believe the things you say, which is beyond scary. I mean, just take a look at where we are. Look at the children in this city that are living on free or reduced lunch in the Scranton School District. We have kids that once again now, for the 10th or 12th consecutive summer now, are going to swelter in the heat because we have stupid people that can't even maintain a swimming pool in the community. But don't worry, we have a splash park coming, so that's going to solve our problems. You should be proud of that. It's a hell of an accomplishment. But it's just ridiculous. A ghost town down here in the downtown, neighborhoods that are just in total decay, seniors that are starving. I mean, I deal with them every day, that they're deathly afraid they're going to lose their Social Security and their Medicaid and so many other things. And they're tired of being overtaxed by you people. And then they ask themselves one question: what do they have to show for it? Nothing. Nothing. They worked their entire lives. They paid and paid and paid. And then look around and look where we are in this city. It's truly sad. And it's just silly when we have, Pell coming in talking about a 3-year exit plan from distressed status. I'll give it a couple of years and this city will be in bankruptcy, because it actually essentially is bankrupt. And it'll be following the same path as the Scranton School District. It's just more make-believe silliness that people have fallen for. And I just hope people wake up in this next election. Thank you.
Ron Elman?
Hello, Council. As you know, I'm a man of few words, and I really don't have much to say tonight, but I have a question. Why in the world do the people of Scranton need a reassessment? Our taxes have gone up the past 6-8 years, like 150%, if I'm not mistaken, from what I'm told. And I listened to some scare tactics. They said that Mrs. Cummings is using a scare tactic. It's listening to people are paying 2.5% more. That is utter nonsense. And anybody that's stupid enough to pay 2.5% more than their neighbor needs their head examined. This is, I know you're familiar. You go down to the building across that used to be the gas company. I don't know what you call it. But it's a reassessment form. It's next to impossible for us to do. It takes a learned person, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe Marie did it one herself, but it's very, you got to be exact, very exacting. I think we need to listen more to Mrs. Cummings than Jerry, and I have a charge account at Jerry's, and I hate to get him mad at me. Who knows how much this reassessment will cost, especially if Mr. Courtright gets some of his $800 or $900 an hour lawyers involved, and Mr. Hermoso gets his law firm in it. It'd cost tens of millions of dollars. And secondly, I forgot when it was, but I think during the winter, I was mad about all those people on Cedar Avenue that don't pay taxes, and there was an article in the paper how great Cedar Avenue looks. And as I remember, there was $200,000-$300,000 in taxes due from the people that they were naming, like the hospital down there. In today's paper, it says that liens are possible. When I was up here, I said, why can't we put liens on them? See, you people don't listen to us. You don't listen to these people. It's very possible. I don't know if anybody up there had any interest in reading this article. It's got the exact law here that says you can put liens on property, passed in 14, and I didn't bring my glasses. Act 93 of 2014 for the Municipal Claim Tax Lien Act. Now, why isn't it being used? Why aren't the friends of the neighbors around the mall being charged with it instead of seeing $1,000 homes in foreclosure continuously? This place is just a nightmare to live in, I'll tell you. Well, I wasn't even going to come tonight. I had some other plans. Yesterday, Miss Rosie went out and bought a dog. It doesn't seem to like me. It doesn't have a tail. It doesn't have a nose. A little puppy. Got a big head. A little bulldog. I decided to get away from it because we aren't very adaptable to each other. I was looking at the pet store. Pets cost more than our house taxes. Do y'all realize? Isn't that unbelievable? How expensive they've gotten. I know years ago when she bought the Basset Hound, it was like $400 or something. Now they're in the thousands. Thank y'all for letting me up here. Maybe next week I'll be in better mood with the dog and I won't bother you people.
Rosie Davitt?
Good evening, gentlemen. I came tonight to ask two questions. The first one is, have we heard anything about my question a couple weeks ago?
We have not received anything yet. Actually, when I saw you outside, I asked Mrs. Reed, but we haven't gotten any correspondence yet from the city engineer or the DPW director, but we are expecting something soon.
Okay, thank you. Also, I was looking at the meeting, the agenda tonight. Thank you, Bill, for letting me know how to get to that. And I'm concerned, and I know that you guys are going to have the hearing next week, but I know that I will not be able to get here next week. I'm concerned because when I looked at the picture of the overview of the court, the right court and stuff, there's a house there that's an actually nice house. My questions about this is, who asked for this vacation of the right court, and is there someone still living in that home that will be affected by this?
We can find out. One of the things within the legislation, it says a request to vacate the roadway had been received. It's not in the backup. I believe it usually is. So, Mrs. Reed, maybe if we can find out from Mr. Pocious who requested the roadway to be vacated, and then we could find out if anybody is living in that property.
Is there a reason that a vacation of a city street would be requested other than just that it's not used?
Yeah, usually there's a little bit more explanation in the backup. It does say in 1, 2, 3, 4, the sixth whereas clause, that the city finds that there no longer exists a need for a public right of passage in this right-of-way, and the public is no longer benefited by such a use. So I guess the thing we should find out is who requested
Right.
it to be vacated.
Because it appears that part of it was already previously abandoned, so we have to find out. And generally speaking, it's an adjacent property owner that's looking to add land to their property. So I'm sure we'll find out by the backup who that person is and why, what the rationale is.
That's all I had. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you so much.
Anyone else?
Joan Hodawana, Scranton resident and taxpayer. I arrived late due to a appointment in Wilkes-Barre, so if I say something that someone's asked before, just have patience with me. And some of these I've asked last week, but I want to repeat them since I haven't gotten an answer. And you only have 3 more sessions before you take your August recess. So I don't want these to fall through the cracks. But the first one is, I noticed on the counter in the city clerk's office, the PEL exit plan with changes. I guess the changes were based on public input. I didn't have a chance to review it. Were there any notable changes made to the exit plan?
There is some comments about reassessment that I asked for. There are also a section about defined contribution plans for non-union employees. It's been put in there. A couple other changes, not a lot, but there's been some modifications. Yeah.
Am I correct in assuming that the PEL supports reassessment?
Yes.
Okay. Speaking of the status of something, June 30th has come and gone. What I did not see it on the clerk's desk or counter was the 2016 independent audit. Has it been released yet?
I'm going to let Mr. Evans answer that.
The draft audit was received on June 30th, and the completed audit is expected July 12th.
It will be,
July 12th.
is that when it'll be available to the
It
public?
should be, because that should be the final.
Okay, and if you could encourage administration to post it on the website, that would be good.
I think it'll be available June, it's going to be, the final will be received July the 12th. I'm not
Yeah.
sure it'll be available right on the 12th, I would imagine.
But shortly thereafter.
I would
days
hope
later.
that it's before the end of July, so we have an opportunity
Oh, I would
to
think so.
discuss
Yeah, I
it
would-
before
I
you
would
go
think
on
so.
break.
Yeah.
Have you had any response or any contact with the Attorney General?
Just what we had last week, I did speak to someone from his office, and he was going to get back to me within 2 weeks.
Okay,
or
so they're still working the issue.
They're looking at how to handle it. Since it's not a criminal matter, they're trying to find the best way to handle it.
Okay. Oh, and an oldie but goldie, the Knowles insurance list. Is that ready for public review?
I mean, my discussions with Mr. Bolzoni are that we expect every quarter to have a revised, and that the quarter should have been over at, I think, June 30th, so I'll ask him again about where that is.
Yeah, because I remember when you passed this in the last week of March, because it went out on April 1st, and there would
Right.
be no insurance, that the comment was made, and I can check in the council minutes, that the list would be scrubbed, since there was obviously some glaring errors, and that the corrected list would be made available for public review. I'm still waiting on
Yes, we
that
think so.
list.
And I believe they had to add the Sorrenti Center to that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
since
so
we
that's why
So
they
that
plan
was
it.
in the process of
Right.
being acquired.
So I think we all agree, well, we agreed that he would do quarterly updates, Knowles would.
Do I have to do a right to know to see
No.
a copy of it?
No, I think we'll get it soon.
Okay, because little things like the $783,000 insurance on the
library.
zoo, I'm
Yeah.
not sure about that one. Okay, how about the RFP for the third-party administrator for the pension funds?
No update.
No update. That's not good, okay? And we have the trust established from the sewer proceeds that would eventually go into the pension funds?
Well, that's all part of the same thing. Third-party administrator has to be hired before the trust
So
is
basic,
developed.
I hope those proceeds are collecting interest. if
I would
nothing
hope-
else.
I would hope so.
I hope so. Okay, and the lawsuit on the tax cap for the city. I'm not so much interested in the status of the lawsuit because it would have hit the papers if there were any change there. But has the city said anything about a Plan B in case they lose their case, other than appealing?
Yeah, Plan Bs aren't the city's strong suit. Really, I don't believe that they have a contingency if they lose the suit.
Yeah, I think, you know, if they lose it, we're looking at probably a tax hike next year, and a hefty one.
But you referenced it to yourself, there'd be an appeal, so.
Yeah, okay. And finally, on reassessment, I know the council is strongly in favor of it. Has the council considered either before or after your August recess participating or hosting a public meeting for debate purposes?
Yeah, I think I addressed it last week. We're actually, with the forum that we have, we're going to have comments pro and con, I believe.
But you don't have a schedule worked out yet?
No, not yet, because
Okay.
we did request some information from the county in terms of cost. So when we get back, it'll be August. The referendum is in November, so, we
So
have some time.
probably after the August break?
I would think probably sometime not in August, I don't think
Yeah.
so. Because when we
My-
come back, we'll have a full agenda when we come back. So I'm imagining probably sometime in September.
Yeah, my only request is, as soon as you nail down dates and locations, please get publicized in the paper
Yeah, the
so that
location
we
would
would
be,
know.
the location would be here. That's my intention anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Dave Dobson, resident, taxes paid, fees paid. Gee, somebody was wearing a nice suit tonight on this side. And had I supported Trump, which I didn't, I'd be looking for a rock to hide under at this point. All he seems to do is hate just about every American institution. He's got a great insurance policy, by the way. It's called Mike Pence. You know, just like George W. had Bush, Dick Cheney. Who in the hell would want him as president? Once again, city business. I'd like to see a change of accounts payable due at winter's end be moved up a bit. You're paying heating bills, you're paying possible taxes of other types, and discrepancies in what was deducted and so forth. And it's a little much to come up with the $300 trash fee or get in under the fence with the $270. And as far as the current ordinance, it's time to start enforcing it. It's time to develop a plan where people who constantly have 5 bags of trash sitting out in front of their house or in back of their house laden with trash and recyclables mixed together, it's time they start to get told that the status quo is not good enough. We study too much, and our studies get their start, and they have their direction before they're ever completed. This is what we're going to do. We're going to change everything around, and somehow it's going to be better than what we had before. Rental registration, Attorney Hickey stated lack thereof is creates holes in the trash fees collection, and others are forced to pay more. There could be duplexes, triple rentals, and so forth, and if they're paying one trash fee, or hardly paying anything at all, which is also what I suspect. Shame, shame, shame. We need to get that. And it's not that there wasn't an effort done, but it just seems like we never seem to get with it and get our get these people rounded up and tell them what they need to pay. I mean, $18,000 or $17,000 with trash fees that were never paid, with people owning multiple dwellings is not acceptable, especially when you're after the average Joe to pay the bill every year. And, you know, I was going up Wyoming Avenue the other day, and another sign appeared for a tax exempt on a building that was previously owned by a glass company. They did windshields and other things. And it's time, it's way past time. Get into federal court and get an interpretation of what threshold is acceptable before the state has to compensate because of their constitution, and the county has to come up with some kind of compensation also. We're at 35%, and if it keeps growing, I mean, I don't want to pay for half of the city not paying. It's already too much, and some of these institutions aren't necessarily as much of a benefit as they'd like to think so. I guess I hold a grudge over the Henry Amoroso donation to start with. All I think he was about was obfuscating the cause of why taxes are so high to begin with. You can't expect the unions to back off. They're never going to back off. People have lost tens of thousands of dollars in the school district in one afternoon with a hybrid pension plan. And don't forget, if you don't like your candidates, W for dictator. We're still there, available. I can straighten things out in no time. Thank you. Have a good night.
Anyone else?
Hi, Heather Tomlinson. I was reading through the minutes here, the agenda, and we have a question. The 7B, authorizing the mayor to execute an amendment to the intergovernmental cooperation for the purpose of implementation of a multi-municipal comprehensive plan. Is that, am I correct in thinking that that is actually SAPA?
Yes.
Okay. And then I'm happy with C. The other question I had, the other thing I have is actually just a comment. She was asking about the public meeting that you guys will hopefully have in September. I encourage you to have it at a time later than Mr. Courtwright had his town hall meeting, because there were a lot of people that I talked to who wanted to be able to get there but couldn't get to a meeting at 5:30 because they still had work. So maybe have it at a later time so more people can actually attend.
Our meeting would be scheduled around council hours. So
Okay.
it'd either be at 5:30 or 6. So
Okay.
because we still have to conduct our other city business
Right.
as well.
Yeah, because I mean, speaking to other people, there have been a lot of times when they want to come to city council meetings or other things that are happening, and
Yeah,
they just can't make it
hopefully
because
we're
of
not
work.
Hopefully, we're not the only ones doing it. We're only proposing this because of our desire to see the reassessment done. But I'm sure there'll be other debates, League of Women Voters probably, more than city council. We're only doing it for our expressed interest of what we'd like to see done. So it's really going to be part of a council meeting. It's not going to be like a town hall setting or
Okay.
anything like
All right, and just, that's it, really. Thank you very much.
that. Thank you. Anyone else?
Fifth order, 5A, motion.
Mr. Evans, you're lead off tonight.
Wow, I'm not used to that. That's amazing. I'll keep it short then. Since we're only 2 days removed from the 4th of July, I thought I would talk about that as well as the July 3rd celebration on Courthouse Square. I have attended that event for as long as it's been downtown, and it's not only a fun event, it's beautiful and it's also inspiring. State Rep Flynn, Marty Flynn, posted a quote on social media a few days ago about, from Abraham Lincoln, I thought was appropriate. Lincoln said, "I see a man proud of the place in which he lives. I like to see a man so that his place will be proud of him." So I would hope that we all strive to live in a place that we live would be proud of us. But more importantly, as Lincoln states, I like to see a man proud of the place in which he lives. Events like Monday's celebration in downtown Scranton only serve to reinforce how proud I am of this place I live. The people, the history, the architecture, and on days like Monday evening, the patriotism, all on full display for all of us to see as thousands gathered to celebrate our independence. No, Scranton's not perfect, not far from it. But like our founding fathers who attempted to form a more perfect union, we are a work in progress. But that won't stop me from being proud of where I live and working hard every single day to make it better. Some may reject that half glass full outlook. Those that take solace in negativity can continue to do that. That's okay. But maybe some others have just chosen a different path. So my final comment is for all Scrantonians this evening it's okay to be proud of who you are, and it's equally okay to be proud of the city that you call home. That's all I have tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Gahan?
Yes, thank you. Just a few items. First, the street sweeper will be in the East Mountain area, July 10th to July 14th, Winter Avenue to Mulkey Avenue, East Mountain Road to Cherry Street, and all streets in between. I would like to request that the administration add Elmhurst Boulevard to future city paving lists. I received quite a few requests and pictures from residents in that area, and it is a road that is in very bad condition. I did receive a complaint about a property in the 300 block of Foster Street that has been foreclosed, unoccupied, and condemned for the past 3 years. The neighbors have been concerned as of late. The property used to be taken care of. It's now become severely overgrown. Bushes are severely overgrown. The sidewalks are in rough shape. The neighbors did try to call the bank who owns it to no avail, so we are requesting that LIPS take a further look into that. We received a letter back in May from residents in the 900 block of Clearview Street. They're having major issues at the bottom of their hill. I was on the phone with the gentleman who lives in that block this afternoon. They're getting backed up sewer water in their basements after every thunderstorm due to blocked sewer lines. They've had different conversations with Pennsylvania American Water and formerly the Scranton Sewer Authority. They did send council a letter. They sent it to the DPW and the administration. I would like to reach out again to the city engineer to see if he can take a look at this issue and if there's any way that we can get some relief to these people. It's very important to them. I would like, Mrs. Reed, if you could send a letter to the administration asking for an update on the closure of the treehouse at Naog Park. I think it's very disappointing, and I think it's an absolute shame that the treehouse continues to be closed. It's one of the main attractions to Naog Park. And I know there's many people that are disappointed that this continues to be closed and probably will remain so until the end of the summer. We did receive great news, as was reported in the newspaper, regarding the Scranton Iron Furnaces attracting an international iron casting conference to Lackawanna County. The city of Scranton beat out Boston, Massachusetts, and Bethlehem to have this conference in Lackawanna County. It will be held May 28th to June 2nd of next year, 2018. It's estimated to bring nearly 1,000 people to the city of Scranton. I just wanted to say a great job to all of those who were involved in the annual Arts on Fire Festival. That festival is actually one of the reasons that this conference is coming to the city of Scranton in Lackawanna County. So I would urge the administration and anybody involved in city government to promote this over the next year to make sure that we get as many people out as possible. And that's all I have this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gahan. Very few items to report this week. A few weeks ago, we did send a request to former Scranton Sewer Authority Director Gene Barrett to come to City Council to answer a few questions. Last Friday, Mr. Barrett corresponded with us declining our offer, so he will not be attending Council to answer any questions. Other comments I'll save for during legislation.
5B, for introduction and ordinance closing and vacating a portion of Wright Court between Linden Street and the formerly vacated portion of Wright Court.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5B be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question, all those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, so moved.
5C for introduction, a resolution appointment of Aja E. Wentham, 711 Harrison Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18510, as a member of the Human Relations Commission effective June 23, 2017. Mr. Wentham will be replacing Susan Bloom Connors, who resigned on June 12, 2017. Mr. Wentham will fill the unexpired term of Susan Bloom Connors, which is scheduled to expire on August 24, 2018.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5C be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question,
Yes, on the question, I just wanted to thank Mrs. Connors for her service on the board. I'd also like to welcome Mr. Wentham to the board. I think he's going to be a great addition. As I was reading through the backup, I was really impressed with his letter of interest, so I wish him the best of luck.
all those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, so moved.
Sixth order, 6A, reading by title, file of the council number 106, 2017, an ordinance approving the transfer of a restaurant liquor license currently owned by Scanlon Incorporated, trading, doing business as Dunmore Brew House, 1400 Wheeler Avenue, Dunmore, Lackawanna County, Pennsylvania, license number R-1172, to Nepali Kitchen LLC for use at 732 Prospect Avenue, Scranton, Lackawanna County, Pennsylvania, as required by the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board.
You've heard reading by title of item 6A. What is your pleasure?
I move that item 6A pass reading by title.
Second.
On the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, so moved.
6B, reading by title, file of the council number 107, 2017, an ordinance approving the transfer of a restaurant liquor license currently owned by Joan Hudak, trading, doing business as Seven Sisters Tavern, 814 Susquehanna Avenue, Oliphant, Lackawanna County, Pennsylvania, license number R-3527, to CFM Beer Brick LLC for use at 337 West Market Street, Scranton, Lackawanna County, Pennsylvania, as required by the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board.
You've heard reading by title of item 6B. What is your pleasure?
I move that item 6B pass reading by title.
Second.
On the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, so moved.
6C, reading by title, file of the council number 108, 2017, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Scranton, Lackawanna County, Pennsylvania, setting forth its intent to issue one or more series of general obligation bonds of the city in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $41 million pursuant to the act of the General Assembly of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, known as the Local Government Unit Debt Act 53 PACS Chapters 80 to 82, as amended and supplemented, finding that a private sale by negotiation is in the best financial interests of the city, determining that such bond shall evidence non-electoral debt of the city, specifying that such indebtedness is to be incurred to provide funds for a certain project of the city which consists of the following: 1, currently refunding the city's outstanding general obligation bonds, Series B of 2003, and 2, paying the costs and expenses of issuance of the bonds, setting forth the reasonable estimated remaining useful lives of the capital projects that are to be refinanced by the bonds, accepting a proposal for the purchase of such bonds at private sale by negotiation, providing that such bonds, when issued, shall constitute general obligations of the city, fixing the denominations, dated date, interest payment dates, maturity dates, interest rates, and redemption provisions, and place of payment of the principal of and interest on such bonds, authorizing specified officers of the city to contract with the paying agent for its services in connection with the bonds, setting forth the substantial form of the bonds, evidencing the debt, authorizing execution and attestation of such bonds, providing covenants related to debt service applicable to such bonds to the extent required by the act, and pledging the full faith, credit, and taxing power of the city in support thereof, creating one or more sinking funds in connection with such bonds to the extent required by the act, designating the paying agent to be the sinking fund depositary, providing a covenant to ensure prompt and full payment for such bonds when due, setting forth registration and transfer provisions with respect to such bonds, authorizing the execution of one or more investment agreements by specified officers of the city, and the purchase of certain U.S. Treasury obligations or any other securities or investments in connection with the investment of proceeds of the bonds and the refunding of the city's outstanding general obligation bonds, Series B of 2003, authorizing and directing specified officers of the city to do, to take, and to perform certain specified, required, necessary, or appropriate acts to effect the issuance of the bonds, including, without limitation, the preparation of a debt statement and borrowing base certificate and the filing of specified documents with the Department of Community and Economic Development, all as required by the Act, declaring that the debt to be evidenced by such bonds, together with all other indebtedness of the city, will not be in excess of any applicable limitation imposed by the Act, authorizing proper officers of the city to deliver the bonds upon the approval of the Department of Community and Economic Development, setting forth certain covenants precluding the city from taking actions which would cause the bonds to become arbitrage bonds or private activity bonds, as those terms are used in the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 as amended, and applicable regulations promulgated thereunder, authorizing the purchase of bond insurance, and setting forth the provisions, if any, required to be included by the bond insurer, authorizing the execution of a continuing disclosure certificate and covenanting to comply with the provisions thereof, authorizing the execution of one or more escrow agreements by and between the city and the escrow agents named therein, in connection with the refunding of the city's outstanding general obligation bond Series B of 2003, if necessary or desirable, approving the preparation, use, and distribution of a preliminary official statement and an official statement by the purchaser in connection with the marketing of the bonds, setting forth the city's intent to provide funds to refund the city's outstanding federally taxable general obligation pension funding bonds, Series C of 2003, and the city's outstanding federally taxable general obligation bonds, Series D of 2003, authorizing the execution of one or more escrow agreements by and between the city and the escrow agent named therein in connection with the refunding of the city's outstanding federally taxable general obligation pension funding bonds, Series C of 2003, and the city's outstanding federally taxable general obligation bonds, Series D of 2003, authorizing the execution of one or more investment agreements by specified officers of the city and the purchase of certain U.S. Treasury obligations or any other securities or investments in connection with the investment of monies which will be used to refund the city's outstanding federally taxable general obligation pension funding bond Series C of 2003 and the city's outstanding federally taxable general obligation bond Series D of 2003, providing when this ordinance shall become effective, authorizing and directing the preparation, execution, and delivery of all other required documents and the taking of all other required action, providing for severability of provisions, providing for the repealing of all ordinances or parts of ordinances insofar as the same shall be inconsistent herewith.
You've heard reading by title of item 6C. What is your pleasure?
I move that item 6C pass reading by title.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, so moved.
6D, reading by title, file of the council number 109, 2017, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to reallocate a portion of the proceeds from the sale of the Scranton Sewer Authority to refund and refinance the city's outstanding general obligation bond Series B of 2003 and refund the city's outstanding general obligation bond Series C and D of 2003.
You have heard reading by title of item 6D. What is your pleasure?
I move that item 6D pass reading by title.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, so moved.
Seventh order, 7A, for consideration by the Committee on Rules for Adoption, Resolution Number 172, 2017, authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to grant a special encroachment permit to Another Time Restaurant LLC, doing business as AV Restaurant, to operate outdoor seating in front of its restaurant at 322 Penn Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania.
As chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7A.
Second.
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7A legally and lawfully adopted.
7B for consideration by the Committee on Community Development for Adoption Resolution Number 173, 2017, authorizing the mayor to execute an amendment to the intergovernmental cooperation for the purpose of implementation of a multi-municipal comprehensive plan by the City of Scranton and the adjacent municipalities of the boroughs of Clark's Green, Clark Summit, Dalton, Dunmore, and the townships of Glenburn, Newton, South Abington, Waverly, and West Abington.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Community Development?
As temporary chairperson for the Committee on Community Development, I recommend final passage of item 7B.
Second.
On the question,
Yes, on the question, I just wanted to briefly say, send out a big thank you to all of those people involved in SAPA and the whole process, all of the communities that have been working so diligently over the past 3 years. The City of Scranton adopted, one of the first things that we did in 2014 was adopt the SAPA plan as our comprehensive plan. I'd also like to thank Mary Liz Donato from Lackawanna County, the Department of Planning and Economic Development, for all of the work that she's done. And I think this is a great example of what happens when two governments work together and the region works together for the betterment of the region. Thank you.
Yes, on the question. As many people know, I've been a supporter of SAPA for almost a decade, and I'm very happy to finally see this resolution passed this evening. Also, the accompanying legislation, which is going to allow for a grant and participate in a grant that's going to finally get the City of Scranton to move off the present zoning code, which was established in 1994, which I was involved with. I actually was one of the authors of that, so I know how long it's been. I actually had black hair, I think, when I did that code. But it's a cost-effective way to do it, but it's also the wider approach, with multiple communities involved. It's going to allow for a more comprehensive zoning code, and it's going to be better for all the municipalities involved, so I'm looking forward to that as well.
roll call, please.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7B legally and lawfully adopted.
7C for consideration by the Committee on Finance for Adoption Resolution Number 174, 2017, authorizing the County of Lackawanna to make application for a grant on behalf of the City of Scranton as a participant in the Scranton-Abington's Planning Association.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Finance?
As chairperson for the Committee on Finance, I recommend final passage of item 7C.
Second.
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7C legally and lawfully adopted.
7D for consideration by the Committee on Public Works for Adoption Resolution Number 175, 2017, authorizing the Director of the Department of Public Works of the City of Scranton to sign and submit the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation application for traffic signal approval for the installation of the solar-powered, two-sided rectangular rapid flashing beacon system, new crosswalk and signing. The Lackawanna Heritage Valley Authority plans to have these installed as part of their safety improvement project along Broadway Street and the Lackawanna River Heritage Trail intersection.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Public Works?
As chairperson for the Committee on Public Works, I recommend final passage of item 7D.
Second.
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7D legally and lawfully adopted.
7E has been tabled.
If there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Meeting is adjourned.